back, and we appreciate you hanging out with us today as we get Week 6 underway, our first weekend back from the Clash. We just saw Heroes Hearth take down Endemic 3-0, but now we turn our attentions to the other side of the standings as we have LFM taking on Simplicity. Dreadnought, this is a team that seems like LFM was on the rise, but they're also a team with a role swap or a roster change altogether as the Aware. He's got some other focuses as they bring in a new support.
Yeah, Dark Chimera is going to be coming in there for Aware to be able to play with this roster. And, you know, I feel like it is going to be hopefully a positive light for this team. Obviously, losing a member is always going to be difficult when it comes to the amount of time and synergy that you put in as a roster. But I can't help but feel like I've had my fair share of criticism towards Aware. And Dark Chimera is definitely not a new name to the support role. So it's going to be cool to see how that works out.
We'll dive deeper into that in a moment. First, let's take a look at the standings to see where these two teams sit. And for these two teams, Dreadnought, make no mistake about it. You are fighting to stay out of Crucible range for LFM. We've heard from Fury. He's been around a lot of the big stages. He expects to make a push towards BlizzCon with only one spot for North America. Will be a difficult climb, but for Simplicity, they started off what seemed like a team ready to come on the rise, but then they had that double weekend where they lost to LFM and No Tomorrow, and things seem to be much more difficult for them in the last few weeks.
Simplicity is a very difficult roster, I feel like, especially for me when I talk about them a lot from a commentary perspective, because they are a roster that, during my time of playing, obviously sitting towards the top of North America, not so much myself as much as it is them, and it's kind of hard, you know. It feels like how the mighty have fallen in a lot of different ways, because we know, much like Endemic, that they can have moments where you go, oh, this is it, this is what we expect, right? But then you can have all those other moments where you go, you know, it seems like the focus has kind of been gone from them as a roster to be able to get that drive. So it's very much something that I'm hoping to be able to see here, because LFM does look like they are a group that is very much hungry, willing to establish a name for themselves, and this is absolutely the mark where they, you know, have to kind of get that push.
Well, speaking of focus, we get to hear from both of these teams to see their focus on this weekend's matchup.
So LFM, during the break, while all the teams are going to Western Clash, we ended up doing some tryouts, as many people are like, they are aware that a player aware that he ended up retiring from Heroes. So this weekend, our focus for Simplicity and Team Freedom will be our new player, Dark Chimera, filling in for the Aware on the support role. I think Dark Chimera has a lot of potential, and you know, he has a big shoes to fill in for the Aware, you know, the Ariel God legend himself. So our first match is against Simplicity, and we're mainly just, I think, having the same game plan of, you know, study, you know, their best players, which in my opinion is probably Hosty. I think just focusing on Hosty like we did the last time we faced him will be a good plan for us.
With what our team is doing, we have minimum practice for every player. So no matter what, we're going to be putting in the work. And one thing people don't know about us is, you know, there have been instances in the past where our players have not put all their effort in. They know that, everyone knows that. But this is the season where everyone is going to go hard and everyone's hungry to be at the top again. We feel like we could outplay any team in a team fight. So honestly, we're trying to expand it so we're not only aggressive comps. We want to be able to play the macro game. We want to have no overall weakness, just be really well-rounded. But we are really good in team fighting, so that would be our signature.
We heard from both members there. Obviously, on one side, LFM, they said they're going to focus on Hosty's role and what he's brought, which we know was a lot of that Sergeant Hammer, but Hosty started to diversify towards the end, more going back to that Hanzo play. But let's take it back to Dark Chimera before we get this underway, because we saw some old images of him. He used to be on the LAN stage, the old Astral Authority roster, Gust or Bust back in those days. It's been a while since he's been at the top in the big leagues, but I did speak to him last night. He's very excited to be back here, and this is a big step up, but it is somewhat short notice for him.
Yeah, it's very short notice, and it is a very different level of play. I feel like, also when looking at, at that time frame where he was on Astral Authority competing, I believe those images were from DreamHack Austin a long, long time ago. And when we ended up getting that from them, again, it's just a very different amount of pressure within the support role. The support role fills a different kind of play style overall. I'm not saying that he hasn't, gotten the practice in to get to that threshold, but I do think it's going to be interesting to see whether or not we see that traditional healer kind of sit back play style in a meta where it very much is the supports are the playmakers of the roster.
We'll see if they can make the plays on where that will be happening as it's time to take a look at the battlegrounds to see where things will unfold here. First battleground underway, LFM. They love to go to Dragonshire. It's their most picked. They're sitting at 3-3 on this battleground as we look at the bans. Braxis holdout by Simplicity. No different there, but Towers of Doom banned out by LFM. That is Simplicity's most picked map. We start things off on Dragonshire, the more macro-intensive map. Dreadnought, I know it's your favorite.
It is my favorite battleground. I absolutely adore it. And already one thing that I want to be looking towards here, even though I think I might be looking at the wrong scope to be asking these questions, but something that I want to pose now because I think through the rest of part 2 is going to be very important is how much does North America adopt top lane pressure on a map like Dragonshire? And I mean, not the early to mid game focus of Dragonite once in a while like we've seen out of the Chinese region when that started to become meta. It is absolutely the go-to effective way to be able to play this battleground, get that top 4 as fast as possible, and make that colossal lane essentially just unapproachable for the other team here. And I feel like whatever team identifies that playstyle the fastest is likely going to set the tone for all of North American Dragonshire.
Yeah, one thing that we see from the Korean teams, obviously fresh off the Eastern Clash for you and I, is they do have that heavy emphasis on that top lane. They expose that top lane, get it down and look for ganks up there, something that we don't see other regions do as much. We'll see if there's any adaptations towards that. One last tidbit about Dark Chimera, by the way, for those of you that are wondering where he came from. He was on the Team Freebirds, currently in the Open Division. They're in the number 2 spot currently in the Open Division standing, so obviously had aspirations to get to HGC through Open Division. He's going to find his way in, and it is now time to get things underway here on Dragonshire. We'll see the priority focus, whether that Sergeant Hammer comes in, but you mentioned the solo lane, and we'll see how much we get Urel in that ban slot in those first 2 picks.
And one thing too with some of the adjustments to the support meta now that we're coming back to North American HGC, with Tiger on the other side, Karzim has been a hero that in the past he was more comfortable with, kind of made a name more for himself. I just wonder if that's something we're going to see show and display itself here in this series for Simplicity, because Karzim actually Dragonshire is one of his better in a very unique way, and the fact that those 2v2, 3v3 skirmishes happen a lot, and 1 E rotation most of the time, Karzim can win those heavily into his favor.
Trades out really well. We'll see if that does come in. That's a very good point there. So we'll see if that does make it into the draft. The Sergeant Hammer banned out. Of course, nobody wants to deal with a Genji, except for maybe Hero's Hearth.
I will say that Genji ban is interesting because normally Genji on this map, the only problem he had is due to that, again, the attention I'm asking towards the top half of the battleground. And though it still seems to be banned out, I'm not confident we'll still see in the rest of the selection and the execution here on Dragonshire that much emphasis towards it. But possibly here with Simplicity, still willing to rid of that, as Urel is going to be the takeaway for LFM.
It was interesting because when Genji came in, I believe he came in around May, late April of last year. It was Genji took over Zeratul's role, because Zeratul used to be that hero that kind of hung out mid, and then when it came time to kill the top lane, it would be Zeratul, and Genji's like, look, I can do it better and more effectively. Obviously, Genji very different in terms of some of the damage numbers and functionalities since then. See how that comes in, but Maev still going to find her way into the draft. First pick here for Simplicity.
That's a really good point that you bring up, though. The playstyle is very, old Zeratul-esque. The difference of what the overall meta internationally has been towards Dragonshire is pretty much playing that Zeratul playstyle, whether or not you do have that melee assassin to make the rotations up there. Again, based on the same logic you had before, well, you're going to get a lot of ganks top. Now it's because the defense, due to that third turret, and more importantly, the experience residing on that top 4, makes it to where it is a very profitable rotation. The Deckard and the Rainer pickup for LFM, though, not putting too much focus into that is, again, both of those are more concerned with their 1-4, very slow, controlling, but slow.
I said, Dark Chimera, are you ready for tomorrow? He said, I've got my Deckard ready.
That's about all you need, boys.
Every support should have a Deckard ready, and we know how how strong he's been in the current meta. Simplicity. What are they going to pair with the Maiev? We got the Muradin. We're getting into the Haka, so not that extra melee assassin, but this does warrant different rules when we look at Dragon Char. Obviously, controlling that top lane does give you the global potential for maybe some early ganks, and especially around those camps in the bot lane.
And judging by the 1-2 of LFM and how kind of linear it's been on the 1-4 approach to the laning situation, I think Simplicity in their first 3 slots have a really good position. If some LFM want to open up with one more pick committed to the traditional 1-4 playstyle, Simplicity can run a very offensive 1-3-1 with like a Phoenix offlaner or something of the like, and just keep the Dahaka up in his lane doing his thing, keep the solo off doing his thing, and then Maiev, Muradin plus the support is a lot of kill potential with the roaming 3. And I feel like that kind of diversity in the laning situation, again, is going to be something as we move forward on Dragonshire we have to keep track of. But right now here with these 2 teams, I feel like, again, Simplicity has the upper hand here unless LFM is willing to get, or excuse me, unless Simplicity is only willing to play a traditional Dragonsire approach and match their 1-4 laning.
Curious now for Fury. Do we get a Garrosh? Do we get an ETC? The Anub'arak, this is a map there he's picked the Anub'arak up on before. The Johanna doesn't seem like the playstyle for LFM. It's not a hero that he can't play, it's just a playstyle mechanic on whether they want to go down that route. So I am curious if we're going to get that Garrosh. Obviously, we see the Junkrat and Leo, so they're going to save that pick towards the end, but the Leo in particular does give you the unstoppable potential against the tethers in that situation. Raynor and Junkrat can stay nice and safe back.
A lot of slow macro control. Again, LFM catering very, very heavily to this 1-4 that is going to be matched up in much like the last series when I said what if we just did it? This is the moment in the draft that if Simplicity wants to divert from it, I think they can, and it's going to make LFM, with their commitment to the draft in the 1-4, look pretty silly with that emphasis towards the top half. But if they don't, and they match it, which, to be honest, their picks aren't catering too much to one direction or another. It definitely has the opportunity to be very skirmish-oriented, but not the full 1-3-1 I was aiming for or wanted to see out of Simplicity. But it's going to be really cool because if Simplicity goes even, plays a traditional, slower Dragonshire, I go LFM makes it a late game, and their comp looks good.
All right. Look, man, I'm looking at Simplicity's draft. I'm trying to find wave clear. Outside of Dahaka, I don't see anything. There's going to be the Garrosh. Tracer. Ever since the Tracer auto attack nerf, right? So generally the playstyle is you get a TAS shield, you can stay in longer, and you trade out better due to the duration of that shield. Now we see a different approach because just the Malfurion, yes, you still get those heals, but trading directly into a Raynor now, it hurts. I mean, Raynor we already know is strong, but trying to trade out, especially against that auto attack range, it's very difficult for Tracer players now without the Tassadar. And then you look at the fact that it's Tracer Maiev as your 2 main damage dealers. That's not a lot of... The kill potential is not exactly there. And to be honest with you, the wave clear is abysmal. I mean, it's bad.
And it only makes this problem I've been highlighting that much more important for Simplicity. I completely agree with you. It puts it in a position to where normally I'm like, I want to see this. Now their draft is so crippled on so many other fronts that they have to do that. And if we don't see them apply that level of pressure, I do agree with you. It's going to be watching the wave clear and the amount of control where it's just chase LFM around Dragonshire is what this game will quickly become.
If LFM does manage to fight, then that will give Simplicity their best chance. We're heading into game number 1 here as LFM taking on Simplicity.
Here they are, ladies and gentlemen, kicking things off where we have Fury on the Garrosh. Swabs is going to be on Leoric. We got Droplets on Raynor. Figgy, sadly not on the front line. Can't say that anymore. On the Junkrat. And we have Dark Chimera here stepping it up on the Deckard Cain.
For Simplicity, they're going to be on the right side here in red. We know that Hosty has that name power against LFM. He'll be on the Tracer. K1 Pro flexing onto Maiev. King Caffeine on the familiar Muradin. Tiger JK on Malfurion. And Zuna is going to do his best on that Dahaka. Dread, sometimes we've seen teams in the top lane prioritize sniping that well. For Simplicity, you see a Leoric on the other side. Dahaka, you get that drain life going in, you just burrow underground, you neutralize that damage. It seems like that might actually be a power play in the early game here.
It very much could be a power play, and so we have to keep track of the laning rotation right out the gate. See that? Hosty makes the transition towards top. This already shows that Simplicity is at least considering this conundrum towards the top half of the battleground and some of the problems that might be endured with that. Now, it's very important that Maev is now going to be the next one that shows a lot of the body language that Simplicity has in mind. Should be on this next wave if they do have that intent to get that top lane pressure, and it's either pressure onto the well or pressure onto the front wall to make Leoric have, again, a less profitable front lane. And with that in mind, LFM now needs to start adjusting to this laning situation if that pressure is going to be so applied.
Dread, you mentioned, you know, Figgy no longer on the front line, but one thing that has been pretty cool for Figgy is that he's 4th in North America in total damage per minute, and I mentioned that a lot.
Wow.
It's top 25 in the world. That's up there, which means that he is very effective in this role. And the total damage per minute, when you are in the top 5 within a region and you're not a solo laner, it means that you are on heroes that you can be extremely effective on and have a lot of control. We know he's played a lot of Jaina. That does help. But it has been something I've noted for Figgy is that his game has stepped up. It's a matter of getting the complete package out of the team, but I think that's a very important thing to note about the impact he's had in that role change.
I think that's, I completely agree with you, because I think one thing that's often underestimated when looking and evaluating, especially our professional players here, is the difference between them and their team, right? Especially for some of those struggling teams. To be a high performer and an outlier numerically and statistically in any way, shape, or form on a struggling team shows that you're often even more proactive in that situation, knowing that you're taking the best out of a losing circumstance. So, you know, if LFM is able to kind of smooth the edges around the rest of their play, I'm confident that they will have a lot of impact there with him onto the offlane. Talking about impact over the battleground, though, LFM have so much control here. The pressure towards the top half was applied early on by Simplicity, but backing out, opting in towards a Knight rotation, lost them a bit of that kind of breathing room. Now is Dahaka able to finally restore the top shrine for themselves.
Well, here's that lack of wave clear, because how do you get on that? Droplet's nice penetrating around, getting the knockback onto Hosty, but they gave up so much in that bot lane. I mean, obviously Maev, since some of the changes, does have better wave clear, but for moments like that, if she's not around, you can see this composition will suffer in those moments. They didn't get that well sniped up at the top. They didn't get as much accomplished as they would have liked, so Simplicity still has some things to do to find some control in this game.
And when I was talking about that top lane pressure and how much focus has to be given onto that, for anybody who watched the last series on Tomb of the Spider Queen, with the offlane pressure that was needed from Heroes Hearth Esports, that exact same thing has to be here from Simplicity. You'll see the Tracer up in the top lane. Even if she's not killing Leo, she's getting pressure on that front wall, so the Dragon Knight can be a bigger problem later. Fury eating the pulse bomb. Pressure is going to be there. Look at the knockback, though. Look at that. Droplets with a massive penetrating rounds, and the rest of the squad regrouping, end up keeping Dark Chimera alive.
Things making sure to keep control there. I mean, you don't want to give up any bit of control to this composition of Simplicity. They have the kill potential as we see the gank squad coming up. Again, it is Leo. It's one of the more interesting matchups, obviously, due to the fact that he has that unstoppable Tracer trying to snipe the well again.
And this is exactly the plays we were talking about. Pressure towards that top half of the battleground, looking for the well snipe opportunity because they have Hosey. Able to dodge that skill to the swing will make sure that he's going to be out just fine there. And though this is moments of playmaking, J-How normally, I guess I feel like probably I come in with maybe a bit more lenient of a scope, but I can't help but feel like this is, again, seconds behind where it needs to be. This should have been on the first couple of rotations from Simplicity. Now bringing the fight down below. Droplets. He's going to eat a tether in a moment after the pulse bomb comes out, ringing it back in. First blood now for Simplicity.
That's what we're talking about. That's what we need to see. Yes, it would have been nice to see it earlier, but they're making up for lost time with a kill there. So they did get that control. Again, the Leo does have ways to stay alive, obviously with the Assign Renewal at level 1, that self-heal, but it does lend towards more of an advantage for Dahaka long-term as we see how those rotations do play out. But structure-wise, there's definitely been a deficit in terms of the amount of damage done by LFM versus Simplicity.
But when looking at the early stages with these compositions, LFM can lose a couple of heroes like that and it be okay. Not quite the case when looking at the lack of wave clear that Simplicity has. So it is another situation where it's nice that we're finally getting that offensive proactive play from Simplicity in the earlier minutes, but they're the ones on a time bomb. They need to be able to keep this up for a lot of this game. So I can't help but feel like, yes, Simplicity, that is a sign of life, but we need a lot more out of this roster just like that, which they end up finding through mid. They're going to hold their own. They do see a giant matchup on bottom, but with Maev getting the kill over mid, now a big tempo swing for Simplicity.
This is a chance for them to get the DK as well. See how long they can survive on this. Dahaka looking to keep control of the top lane. It does look like LFM able to at least neutralize for a moment. We'll see now with Garrosh showing mid.
Oh my.
Those roots Droplets.
Trying to kite out.
Got him.
Got the parting gift and the kill here. Maiev trying to get the channel on mid. Fury able to get the denied there as Tether thrown out. No escape available. K1 Pro going in. Actually, he might regret that one. Hold up, though. The squad is here looking to defend it out. The 1v1 on top. Leoric versus Dahaka. Leo was actually holding his own. And look at this. Dragonite taken for Simplicity there after winning the 3v3 in mid. And now gaining quite a bit of control as this Dragonite will be able to siege through mid. But look at that. LFM doing work in the top lane.
Yeah, Simplicity has to make a lot happen with their kills. That's the difference, is that they don't have the sieging capability, but they have to make a lot happen. You get the kill, it's good you get the DK, but getting the DK is not enough because you've given up so much in the process. Getting the kills is going to be a constant, persistent thing. It's almost like you're in a movie and you can't go less than 55 miles an hour and you just have to keep your foot to the gas. Anybody out there listening want to write that script? I'm pretty sure it's never been done before, but you know, you got to keep your pedal to the metal.
Keeping it floored here. And they're trying. They're doing their best. Sieging up with the Dragonite, but I mean, good defense out from LFM, and this is what, wow, LFM's composition is great at making happen. Eventually that turret will end up going down, but the fact that those are not open and providing more playground territory for LFM to provide those kills with the Tracer Maiev gap closing opportunities, it's just Simplicity is... It almost feels unfair to use the word controlling, winning the early game, but I don't think that's going to be for very long. I would put it at roughly the 13 to 15 window. If this game remains dead even, LFM is going to become a very big problem with their composition. Outside of maybe a major Zuna brushstock play is the only thing I can see that Simplicity depend on.
Ooh, King Caffeine sniffing out the bush. Fury trying to see if they're on the camp. Indeed they are. LFM shows that they are at the top left, giving Simplicity moment of confidence and control here in the bot lane. Neither team with the siege camps available just yet, so we'll see how well that is dealt with down here. Not taking that fort tower. Again, not a tremendous amount of experience anymore, but definitely something that gives you that control. King Caffeine seeing if he can come in with a snipe. Only 9 stacks so far.
Yeah, not the most successful stacking onto the Muradin, at least not yet here, but I don't know. For me, I think a lot of this comes down to the laning decisions on a map like Dragonshire, and part of the reason that things like that aren't as successful, and again, is because Simplicity's been a bit more reactive, and whenever you're sat back, you're the ones that end up getting the clear on the waves in a lot of these situations and not getting as much kill potential as you would like. It just puts it to where Muradin's a bit more of a, you know, kind of soaker, and it's one of those, we wish we could adjust it, but that's the comp that we found ourselves in after the pick bans. Both teams picking up the Giants here. Top lane, still not too much focus put into, and we are rounding that time frame where I think Simplicity has kind of one last team fight where it's very much them on dead even footing and have the opportunity, but if they struggle in this type of situation, if they stall it out, you're going to see this wave clear, lane control become a very big problem as the flank tries to come through. Biggie, he's got the trap.
Yeah, you could see it coming. You could see it on the minimap. If they do get that dive potential, that Dahaka brushstock you mentioned, that would be the best opportunity. Yes, you want to get that top, but if you get that fight there, that's when you try and explode, rip this open, take control. Unable to do so. They do have those siege giant camps there. Right now, they have control over both. It looks like Leo will grab control of the top before K1 Pro is able to make an attempt on the DK.
And so, for anybody at home wondering why I'm so concerned with the top half of the battleground, even though there's been so little focus, is Leo wins this trade over and over again. He will get this clear, buy that time, and get it for himself. If either one of those forts ends up going down, that buys a huge advantage for one team or the other. They're going to try the initiation. Brushstock attempt. Indomitable, though, this says nigh to any initiation attempt from Simplicity. 5-man commitment out from them. And now LFM have the upper hand.
Yeah, Simplicity, I mean, you only get those once a minute when you're on the Dahaka, so see if he can make his way back into position. That did give Leo that control in that top lane. See if that fort does hold. Those minions, as they scale up, could give you more and more control. Obviously, they want to defend against the DK cap, but for Zuna, didn't go the armor reduction at 13, but still pretty significant wave clear here for Dahaka.
But Jay, we can feel this game closing on Simplicity as every wave goes by here. And that control on the top half, now both controlled by LFM. They're going to be looking for that pressure. The 1v1 on top still is there. No brushstock for a couple more seconds. Stormbolt lands. K1 Pro not going to pull the trigger yet here as Tiger JK joins the rest of the ranks here over mid.
See if we get another Brushstalker and should be off cooldown soon, but Fury just trying to keep them at bay. Gets the toss back, of course, does have that taunt, does lock down that taunt, but not before Dahaka took the top lane, and now we've got a fight breaking out. Chimera, he's stuck in the middle. That is not a place he wants to be. Tranquility out, keeping multiple members of Simplicity alive. LFM, they're fighting for DLI.
But Chimera is actually kiting out and keeping himself alive. The last shield is there. Fury trying to do his best as well. 47 armor has been built up there.
50 armor? Are you kidding me?
He goes down after it's all said and done there. LFM with a bit of miscommunication around their initiation, not necessarily the opening that they would want. And then they almost get the recovery there, but Simplicity did gain the upper hand off that kill. Dahaka securing the bottom shrine here as the 4-man rotation for LFM up above. Wraithwalk baits out that tether.
I am starting to worry. This should be a play towards the DK as Dahaka already starting to make his way there. Does have that added movement speed coming out of there. Junkrat doing his best to get over. It looks like he just missed the mark on that jump as Hosty goes in, gets the zone out. This is DK number 2. As much as we feel the control has been there for LFM, I can't help but look at the scoreboard. It's 4 kills to 0. Simplicity finding a way to start to get these small picks. Again, can you do something with it?
They are kind of still in that situation. We're just now able to break ahead over LFM, and I feel like, again, as you said, how much can they get out of it? Because I don't know if it's going to be enough at this point in time. And it's mainly with that top 4 being whittled away at wave after wave on Leorix. And is the next Dragon Knight really going to be, that kind of profitable? Because if we keep in mind, Jay, how outside of that last skirmish, which is where 3 of those 4 kills came from, which was through a miscommunication opening on the side of LFM, Simplicity really hasn't been able to force those fights as successfully as they would maybe want. So if LFM cleans that up, does this gain that kind of control? And again, the back and forth here has been so even up until this point. I'm not sure Simplicity have enough for themselves. They do have the siege here onto the Dragon Knight towards the bottom keep. The biggest thing for this after the Dragon Knight is LFM cannot waste any time. They need to paint the battleground red when it comes to the Giants, Knights, every mercenary available, because they need to maintain that control and keep up the picks here with that vision and information obtained. If they failed to do that, I would actually argue I think LFM has what it takes to come back.
Leo says, look, I could probably take this down, but I'll try my hand at this later. Obviously, very near 16. Didn't have eyes on the rest of Simplicity on their rotation up. You mentioned the miscommunication there. There was a clear focus on getting the DK through either sleeping them or the taunt. Unfortunately, both overlap. And more unfortunately was they ended up giving up control over that shrine during that phase, and then thus Simplicity able to turn that. And if they are able to clean that up, obviously, you mentioned, it's up to supports now, especially on the likes of Decker, to be the playmaker, try and set that up. But obviously, showing the new familiarity in that fight, see if they can shore that up to get back into this game. And for what it's worth, Dreadnought, I mean, they've only lost 2 forts on the side of LFM and Simplicity. I'm pretty sure that top fort has like -2 HP, so it won't take much to finish that off.
I mean, looking at the numbers, again, Simplicity's winning this game, but in Dread's brain, LFM's winning this game, and they still are winning this game because Simplicity has not been able to get ahead with their composition. It is only a matter of time until they should be able to bully the top half. Though it is not North American standard in playstyle, this is more a compositional flaw than it is, again, the meta, if you will, of Dragonshire kind of taking over. The siege will continue for LFM, though, with the Night Camp and Giants. Siege up down below. We'll see if we get ourselves a brush stock as that Night Camp doing work for Simplicity. Now, keep in mind, that top lane pressure I've been worried about in favor of Simplicity for the first time in a long while, but Leoric is going to deal with that. 20 will not be here before the next Dragon Knight phase, and this is all we were concerned about. Will Simplicity get ahead enough at this point in time? And it looks like, normally I'd say LFM should have that top fort. They don't. So Simplicity maybe has enough.
That threat of the Dahaka, I think, is the only thing that kept that bottom fort standing because they had the double camp pressure, and we've seen from teams like Tempo Storm that double camp pressure in the bottom is pretty significant.
But this is a huge problem for LFM. They aren't committing to either control of either one of the shrines, which means they're going to have to fight over mid. This is the same mistake they made over that last Dragon Knight, and it cost them a lot. This is the exact opposite of what this composition wants to do, is take a demanded fight over a specific territory of the battleground. They want to wave control and say, you follow us, but LFM is the one following Simplicity here. They end up getting that control for a fraction of a second back here with the transition towards top, but Jay-How, that is not good here for the next couple of seconds for LFM if they make those same misplays.
Finally, did you get the top fort taken down in the meantime? Tracer pushing out bottom as we see on the mini-map, but the real action, of course, could break out at any moment here in the mid lane. King Caffeine holding 1 bush. Swabs and Fury, they'll make their presence felt as they make their way down. There's going to be the Groundbreaker forcing King Caffeine to say, you know what, I don't want to see if he can make distance. I'm just going to go ahead and Dwarf Toss out of here.
Control over bottom going over to LFM. Zuna already making the transfer to control top lane for Simplicity, but this is where that top lane is going to be a problem. As I said, the minion wave pushing against them should provide a vision and rotational advantage for LFM if they would like to make that happen. But with so much emphasis towards bottom and willing to kind of poke and prod this down, they're losing a lot of control over middle, which is going to set them back in the rotations over this shrine. They didn't even secure the bottom 4 for that matter. Now going back to double check it, but man, that is about 15 seconds late.
Yeah, it seems like Simplicity may be playing for the late game. They can see the siege camp on both sides just under 10 seconds away, and that is one way to establish control in that lane control. The night camp's obviously still on the longer cooldown, so we'll see how both teams can try and play around this as Simplicity takes a clear approach towards it. LFM realizing that 20 is almost there. They get the toss in. Stay a while and listen is slept too, but not before the pulse bomb goes out. Dark Chimera stays alive. King Caffeine as well, as we see the Unstoppable there just in time for the Indomitable to eat that isolation.
Swabs is 1v3 right now, not taking any damage whatsoever, completely splitting all the members of Simplicity. When looking at the heroics, Riptire and Entomb is still available. And ladies and gentlemen, the level 20 spike for Entomb is significant. Buried alive, one of the best 20 spikes we have in the game. Simplicity has to be careful of that. Warden's Cage will be available for them as the race of 20 still being won by Simplicity. Swabs is going to backdoor that top shrine, giving shrine control in the top half to them. But with Simplicity backdooring bottom, things are going to be just fine here. Merc control available for LFM, but they're so far behind on those rotations. Simplicity, again, gaining the upper hand.
You got to double up on that siege camp bottom. And they're turning their attention to it now. Yeah, the night camp will give them long-term pressure for LFM, and that's the right call because it buys time. And if Simplicity doesn't do much with this camp here, you can see they're trying to see if they can bait out that concussion mine. Unable to do so, but this gives bot lane control to Simplicity. LFM, they're trying to regain top control with that camp of their own. They're going to be met by the rest of Simplicity. There's Rainer's Raider getting a scout out by...
Ooh. That's a rotation I guarantee Dark Chimera does not make again, because if so, there will be a Stormbolt and an immediate death. Ladies and gentlemen, on Dragonshire, that shrub right there is the deadliest of deadly shrubs at competitive Heroes of the Storm. Very, very scary to be able to move past that one. He survives this time. See if they do so again. Garrosh secures bottom control, while Dahaka picks up top. Top Knight has to still be dealt with, while Junkrat did end up getting the clear over those double giants on bottom. So a small time frame advantage for LFM if they can force. Nature's Cure was baited there. If I'm LFM, I go for a Buried Alive initiation in this downtime because that is a huge window where no Dahaka, no cleanse, hopefully no Simplicity after.
Dark Chimera making his flavor felt here as we get perfect gems picked up at level 20 for Deckard. Obviously a different play style than what we see, but reduce the cooldown of all your gems by 25 seconds. The cooldown of Roderick Cube by 5 seconds. So making sure to play around those. Obviously you've got the Sapphire at the control at level 1 and 7 between the Sapphire and the Emerald.
Strongly suggest everybody at home at least taking 2 gems before taking that talent. More often than not, if you only have 1 of the gems, that talent is not going to be as high impact.
Saw Zuna miss the drag there. Didn't go the elongated tongue at level 16, instead going for that movement that you get while you burrow under. And this is the lack of wave clear. This can mount up, and it's really just Maev trying to hit that E out there and get the clear. But that is an entire wall down with little resistance.
But wave clear and rotational advantage still in favor of Simplicity here. They're going to get aggressive knowing that they have the Night Camp still sieging way up on top and they have control over that top shrine. This is their fight to take. Indomitable already forced there by Fury. He's going to eat the Stormbolt as the root comes out from Tiger JK. No kill confirmed quite yet, but they're focusing. K1 Pro is going to go in with the Tether. Tranquility along with the Buried Alive is used there. Tracer trying to make it out, but she survives. Dark Chimera is now the focus. The Riptire ends up going down, and Dark Chimera lies victim here to the hands of Simplicity.
Ooh, King Caffeine trying to make his way over, ended up getting stuck in another trap there, but now this is going to be another DK potentially. Leoric trying to make his way up to the top lane as quick as possible, but we have Dahaka already getting the brush stalk in. See if they can get the interrupt on this. No, he knows that he has to clear these ranged minions. And the grenades, they've got to find a way to keep these at bay, and it looks like this should be enough time. Zuna picks up the DK, and now we're 20 minutes in. Simplicity can now start to make more of a pressure. They don't want just keep here. They want to look for more. Still 28 seconds before Chimera is up, so they can be aggressive here.
Really cheeky play there from Dropless to try and use that Rainer's Raider over the wall to get the interrupt, but not able to do so. And as we said, it is a difficult time here for LFM. No Deckard Cain available. Dragon Knight sieging away, and this is likely going to be this bottom keep going into their favor. We'll see if LFM can somehow dive past find themselves a kill here or there. Lack of wave clear being displayed here, even with the Dragonite, is Junkrat pretty much getting the upper hand here out of the clear. Stormbolt not going to land onto Swabs. Fury falling low. Kick going to go on to Droplets, actually, and that costs a lot of that Dragonite's HP.
Now we're seeing if we get any type of follow-up as the scroll comes down. Another stun onto Fury. Again, he did go double up at 13, so it makes it less appealing to use him as that priority target. Just doubling up on that, getting that takedown onto Garrosh is already difficult, but it's even more difficult with that level 13 talent. They get the keep. They have the global control with the Tahaka. You are in control of Dragonshire when you have those variables in your favor. But for Simplicity, there's still a long way to go. Still 0 kills for LFM Dread.
0 kills and not enough control to really matter at this point in time, judging by, you know, the fact that they are losing with all the forts here over the Dragonites throughout this game, and that bottom siege now getting the catapult pressure down below. A lot of that fear about what might be happening towards the Dragonite phases for Simplicity are very, very grim now for LFM based on that situation, though. The tether after the Stormbolt coming through. Silence lands onto Garrosh, but he keeps himself alive. Fury is holding his own. He lands the ton. He flips him over. The Riptire goes through, but the Tunneling Claws used. Stay a while and listen is going to be dropped by Chimera. Look at the, oh my, Buried Alive is used, and they actually get the kill on to Simplicity here. Tiger JK ends up dropping, and LFM get the pick in the late game. Is this the turnaround moment, J.O.?
The Garrosh somehow survived in all of that. I thought for sure that once he fell, it would just snowball out of control. Instead, Swabs had other ideas as he did get that buried alive, and the minute that kill didn't go down, LFM simply re-engaged in the middle of that. They get their first takedown of the game, and it couldn't have come at a better time because they needed something to establish some control over this battleground after losing that keep. They get it for now, but they still, again, are down that keep. They don't have the global. This does allow them to try and make moves on this battleground.
Yeah, they can really get the momentum into their favor, but it's the timing of when they get that pressure out. For instance, the Giants down below are going to take a little bit of damage for free over that wave. They know the 10 seconds until Malfurion is back, so a 20-second difference between when they have a Dragonite available and when the Simplicity is at even footing. But judging by the fact that they have the momentum swing down below, honestly, somebody on LFM, if they had any intent of a Dragonite, should have been top already. It should be looking for the Simplicity, immediate capture, you counter capture after, and get the Dragonite into the downtime. But the fact that they aren't willing to do that, they're willing to take another fight down below with this double camp. Yes, their siege is far better than Simplicity, but last time this happened, J-House, they ended up losing multiple members, and nobody anchoring is going to lead to a very easy flank.
They're looking for a backdoor DK. That's Tracer and Tahaka. If Tracer gets that bottom one, Tahaka will brush Stalker mid, but will it be too little too late? We've seen teams make this mistake before, that they prioritize the DK. This is double camp on the core. Swab's going in. There's going to be the taunt there. The Buried Alive is trying to take down Muradin. It is successful. Tranquility keeping members alive. K1 Pro gets knocked back. Figgy, though, however, he's going to fall there on the Junkrat as the Stay On Listen is out. 2 members now down on the side of LFM.
Yeah, Droplets was the biggest damage onto the core, and him going down along with the Junkrat means no more siege damage available for LFM, and now they're trying to retreat out of here. Fury throws one back, and now Hosey trying to get the auto attack splash dismount to make sure nobody can make it back on full retreat. Swabs is fine to be able to make this out, but Chimera and Fury are not. Brushstock through mid, Dragonite channeled, and Simplicity pick up a 24-minute DK, 35 seconds until 2 members of LFM are back on the battlefield.
Yeah, Leo just doing his best, trying to drain that life, ends up using the Unstoppable with that Wraith Walk, already taken down 10% of that life of the DK. They need to get everything. They need to delay this as long as possible. Simplicity trying to take game number 1 here as they move down into the spot lane. Still 15 seconds away for Junkrat, 17 for Raynor, and now the Assault should pursue here for Simplicity, trying to win game number 1.
Yeah, no stay a while and listen to buy a bit of time here. Dragonite auto attacks just chunking away, roughly 6% a shot. The Buried Alive is used there onto the backline, getting the kill onto K1 Pro, but it is too little, too late. Ladies and gentlemen, here Simplicity takes game number 1 on Dragonshire.
They did it in impressive fashion. I mean, given their composition, you look at that and you're thinking, man, this shouldn't work that well, but they managed to get picks, slowly start to contribute more and more to different picks as things went on.
Apparently my stool just keeps moving closer to my mark. I blame that. That's my bad here. Don't mind me.
You thirsty?
Yeah, a little bit there.
We get thirsty when you talk a lot. You gotta have something.
Gotta have the water juices flowing here. But yeah, it is. Man, the early game, a lot of that game, to be honest, I feel like was not necessarily Simplicity forcing as hard as I would have liked, but it definitely was not LFM stopping the bleeding and applying the damage that they need with their composition to really be the problem that I think it could have been in a lot of different ways there. But they are a newer team, you know, trying to figure things out, especially when it comes to the macro front. And with our Dark Chimera showing up for the day, the miscommunication around that middle Dragon Knight, things like that, I think that's kind of expected over the first week here. And, you know, it's game one. Hopefully it'll clean up as we go along.
It takes time. I mean, obviously this is his first time. He's been on the streams when it comes to the Open Division, but it's been a long time since he's been on the big boy stage, and he's finding his way back. And sometimes nerves can get to you. He's a very experienced player, don't get me wrong, but there is difference between, hey, I'm playing an Open Division where I'm playing an HGC where I got a team that probably more skilled and really looking to bring it to you, and that is Simplicity. That's what we know them to do. They brought the fight. The lack of wave clear obviously didn't have that much of an impact as they were able to just come through, team fight, find those picks. It really seemed like that miscommunication was kind of very indicative of LFM's early struggles, and I think they'll be able to bring it back. But for Simplicity, strike while the iron's hot. Find a team that is still working through some changes. We know Simplicity is desperate for wins. This is a way to start to fight your way out of Crucible range and look towards the playoffs.
Normally when I look at Simplicity, I'd be like, one of the biggest weaknesses of this type of team that you can take out is going to be the macro. They have never been a team that you look at and you go, yeah, uniformity and rotations, that is the kind of the outlier. It's no, they'll bring the fight, and they're one of the best team fighters that we can have as a team at the HGC North America. So the fact that they were on a macro-oriented map, down a macro composition against a very good macro composition like LFM, it just, for me, immediately goes like, these next two games, I'm looking, where can LFM find themselves a win? Because that is, again, the way they got the victory, not what you'd expect for LFM. And for most of the game, they did end up having the control. I still will reside on LFM should have been able to play that better to where it shouldn't have been that way, but I mean, they didn't, and that's the biggest thing here.
I'm with you on that. I mean, you have the Garrosh composition. You expect those pick kills. They didn't get it. They had more sustained damage in the Junkrat and the Rainer, unable to get those execution kills. I am curious, though, like where we're going to see, you know, LFM, do we get Battleground choice? Do they want to give up first pick? Because we know Simplicity, they love first pick. They always have. They always, traditionally, all Zuna teams are like, look, we love first pick. That's what we want to do. So we will gladly give up Battleground choice. When I looked at LFM, their next most picked Battleground after Dragonshire, which, mind you, they've picked it 4 times, it's Sky Temple. They've picked it 3 times. I got bad news for them. They're 0-3 on Sky Temple. So every time that they've picked it, if they want to play more macro style, is that your play style? Is that what you want to be known for? So I am really curious what LFM will do with the next choice.
I completely agree. And it's a weird conundrum that I wish we could be like, you know, LFM's the only team to ever have done that. But that is very much not a true statement. There are actually a surprising amount of teams that have a negative win rate on a Battleground, or even can't even find a win, but is comfortable end up getting the selection. And I don't know if this is one of those moments I want to see them adjust it. I can see LFM going, stability is the most important thing at this point. You're right, to have something to reflect on and be like, okay, here's what we did here, here's what we did there. We can, again, learn something and have that cross comparison. And having Sky as a reoccurring element is a good learning point. And I would say probably one of the easier Battlegrounds to learn those trade-offs, because it's very clear what your win conditions are. But at the same time, if it hasn't been working, is that it's tough against Simplicity here, especially knowing that it's a team fight oriented map. You can snowball out of control, and I would never take Simplicity to that.
And it was LFM during phase 1. It was their most successful Battleground. We went to Sky Temple. We knew that's where they picked up the wins. They didn't have the best record during phase 1, but it was where we saw them go to the most, and it's where they picked up their most wins. I believe at one point it was the only map they were 500 on or above at that point, sitting somewhere 3-3 later in the season. So obviously it is something for them to consider in terms of how much control they want to go with. We know some of the strengths for Simplicity rely in their Sergeant Hammer compositions, but now we got to start looking at the Maiev. We saw the Maiev show up a lot at the Clash, and especially in the Western Clash, and then we only saw one game from K1 Pro during Part 1. I would say that now is his chance to continue to flex and shine.